subscribe. This isn't the video you were really expecting, and I want to talk about what happens after the rescues. No matter how emotional the rescue is, it doesn't matter. The story behind the rescue you have access to. Today, it's about the situation that hundreds and hundreds of animal protection associations and shelters across Spain are facing. Because yes, we could use the video just to show you how we managed to rescue these 2 greyhounds. The reality is that they belong to an individual, and they kept escaping under the fence. They had been escaping continuously for almost a month. We're no longer on our way to drop them off. A shelter that we are reaching out to because we are completely full. We can talk about the frustration and helplessness that arises when you live in a continuous paradox and hypocrisy where you have to have double standards. A person whose dogs have been escaping for a month and a half, who have been almost run over countless times, who is aware that they have this problem, who has to be 3 minutes away from offering us their dogs so that we can take care of them. You have to have the ability to, in a way, hold back that first impulse to want, to instill a bit of dog training education in this person, and they have to be almost grateful because have had the grace in the head of giving ourselves to the dogs. So it's hard to accept in terms of principles and values, but it's absolutely necessary because otherwise the work can't be done. Well, that situation is this. It is a problem that only those of us who are already immersed in it live and experience in this life, but the rest of society doesn't seem to have a good grasp on the reality, and the reality is that there are hundreds of thousands of dogs. The reality is that this costs hundreds of thousands of euros. This costs hundreds of thousands of hours of volunteering of people who selflessly or with some interest. Sometimes they also put in their time and effort to try to help. And we are completely overwhelmed. The reality is that we went out to rescue these 2 greyhounds, not for us, but for another organization, and the conditions under which we went out to try to rescue the dogs were that we couldn't keep the dogs. The reasons why a shelter or a rescue organization decides that we can't take in more dogs, it's also because it's not financially viable to have more animals and you can't help. Beyond helping you emotionally when it comes to taking them in and getting you deeper into a debt that you might not be able to handle. And the reason, at least in our case, for when we reach certain points where we say we can't take in any more dogs, it's simply the fact that we reach certain points where we say we can't take in any more dogs. It's nothing other than the fact that including one more dog in a space where there are already more dogs without knowing the new dog and without having had the necessary time to work with it. It's literally putting either the new dog or a dog that was already there at risk of death. And this is the reality of our work. And this is the reality of why certain decisions are made. So what happens is that to the shelter where we're going to do the rescue, it's a very large shelter where there are several levels when it comes to communication. And what happens is that the person who received the dogs didn't know they were going to receive them. She's the person in charge of bringing those 2 dogs into the organization. And there comes a moment when she almost cries and her eyes filled with tears because they asked me if I could keep them. They tried to ask me if I could keep them for a day until they sorted things out. And we've reached the point where we know we can't help because we're putting any animal's life at risk. We don't do it. And I said out loud, if I'm full, I'm aware that I can't take in any more dogs. I don't go out to do any rescues. I don't go out to do any rescues if I don't have the tools to try to get in touch with another shelter, with another association, and see if they have space for a possible rescue. The conversation between the person who took in the dogs, and in this case me, who brought them, was about recognizing each other. That the situation was unmanageable and unsustainable for both of us. But I had gone out with certain conditions. Your shelter had already accepted the dogs, and I left them there. And I left there feeling like I was ruining this girl's life because something could happen. And if something doesn't happen, it's just a coincidence. We're all overwhelmed. This is a real problem. You can't keep patching up the situation without having a clear idea of where you're going and what you're going to do. The shelters can't take it anymore. The level of urgency for everyone is really high because everyone needs help, is super high, which means that the vast majority of people are coming in. A moment when I hear it on a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and I'm already desensitized to everything that's happening. It is necessary direction, and we need it. Knowing where we're going, if you're trying to project into the future, 4, 5, 10 years, what's going to happen to all the dogs? What's going to happen to all the abandoned dogs that are still being abandoned? What do we do? There are hundreds of thousands of dogs. If not, the most likely thing is to burn people out by making them feel like we're just in a cycle and in a dynamic of passing the problems around from one to another without seeing a way out of all this.